Alright, ladies and gentlemen, gather around. Today, we're going to dissect yet another masterclass in political and economic chaos, the one and only, France. Yes, the land of croissants, fine wine, and credit downgrades. We've seen many car crash economic moments over the years, but this latest saga out of Paris. Oh, this one is almost an art form. Moody's ratings just pulled out the red card and downgraded France's credit rating from AA2 to AA3. This now puts it 3 levels below the golden AAA zone, that rarefied air of fiscal responsibility. Remember, for comparison, France's closest buddy in the spreads widening club is Italy, yes, Italy. But what's behind this downgrade? Well, France finds itself in a lovely political mess reflective of a typical soap opera script, except the consequences aren't just comedic, they're economic disasters. A quick recap of the core plot. Marine Le Pen, the right-wing populist leader of National Rally, has toppled the government in a fight over deficit reduction. Sounds promising, doesn't it? Public finance in shambles. Business confidence in freefall. And now they've had 4 prime ministers in less than a year, fast turnover or what? The newest kid on the block, François Bayrou, France's newest prime minister, has a monumental task to avoid a complete economic collapse. But wait, there's more. Let me break this down from point to surface because this debacle is a giant onion with layers of fiscal incompetence. So, let's delve in. Ah yes, France's sluggish attempt at fiscal responsibility. You see, President Macron and his team wanted to reduce the deficit, at least they said so on paper. But here is the harsh economic truth, France is staring down a deficit projected to hit 6.1% of GDP this year alone. Things were set to slightly improve, with Michel Barnier, the former prime minister, promising to cut it to a whopping, wait for it, 5% by 2025. Now imagine trying to run a business where you say, hey, we're losing money at a record pace, but don't worry, next year, we'll lose just a little less, woman shrugging, hence why the bond markets and creditors were like, yeah, no thanks. But take a guess, Barnier's austerity-light plan. It was too much for both the populists, Le Pen's party, and the left-wing parties, their anti-austerity stance, so they pushed him out, leading to massive uncertainty. Now, Prime Minister François Bayrou has to clean up this mess, trying to balance public anger, political grids, and France's growing deficit. Not an easy gig. In its very diplomatic tone, Moody's reference to the downgrade boiled down to this: we see no way France is going to reduce this gargantuan deficit in a sustainable and meaningful way anymore. And guess what? Moody's is right. So, what happens to economic sentiment when your government collapses, uncertainty skyrockets, and reforms get tossed out the window like yesterday's baguette? That's right, business confidence evaporates faster than investment opportunities in this kind of environment. The spread between French and German bonds has widened to its largest gap since the sovereign debt crisis in 2012. Translation: investors are demanding even more return to hold French debt due to rising risk, meaning trust in France's ability to manage its finances has gone kaput. And why wouldn't it? France has been teetering for months between repetitive union strikes over pension reforms, stalled labor market laws, and an overall hostility towards the only reforms that could actually make a difference. The result? We're seeing a sluggish economic growth. The latest data shows that France's GDP will limp along at around 0.8% to 1.2% annual growth for the next 2 years, hardly a ringing endorsement for future prosperity when your interest payments are eating more and more of your fiscal pie. France isn't just France's problem anymore. Oh no, it's now Europe's elephant in the room too. The eurozone, still recovering from COVID economic disruptions, is now carrying a member state whose fiscal weight and political instability directly contribute to uncertainties around the euro. Remember the good old days of a united front at the European Central Bank? Yeah, that was before inflation across the eurozone skyrocketed to an average of 5 to 6% in major economies, and interest rates hiked to stave off price increases devastated the region. And now France, one of the largest contributors to the euro area's GDP, is stumbling. So, if Paris is struggling to get its fiscal house in order, the repercussions could be catastrophic for neighboring economies and ultimately for the euro itself. But hey, what's the fun in being fiscally responsible when you can set euro-wide crises on fire, right? And if you thought Brexit was bad, remember Marine Le Pen is still flexing her "we don't need the EU" muscle. Should Le Pen's vision truly take root, an EU fragment would become a tangible risk, inching ever closer. The larger European project? In danger. Here's another kicker: France's attempts at keeping its budget whole from turning into a fiscal crater were already doomed thanks to lower than expected tax revenues. And why, you ask? Simple, both consumer spending and corporate profits have been missing in action. I mean, if people aren't buying stuff and companies aren't making profits, then, frankly, no money is coming into the state's coffers. And let's not forget that inflation is driving a real wage decline. While the European Central Bank jacks up interest rates to curb inflation, France's middle class is feeling the squeeze harder than a miser's grip on a euro coin. They aren't spending because, well, they can't. Where's that disposable income when rents, energy bills, and food prices are climbing to their highest levels seen in years? Want some actual numbers? French household consumer confidence dropped to its lowest level since the pandemic started, and corporate profits, a reflection of factory production and export competitiveness, haven't been this bad since, you guessed it, the 2008 financial crisis. But hey, we can always count on politicians to promise miracles while ignoring these loud, red-flashing warning signs. For those who enjoy the flavor of doom sprinkled on their financial cocktail, here's the cherry on top. Surging bond yields, thanks to a lack of confidence in France's fiscal discipline, are raising the cost of borrowing for the French government. And as we all know, borrowing slows down investment in more productive areas. The spread with German 10-year bonds has widened to the largest gap in over a decade, meaning even bond traders are saying, we're not sure about France anymore. A decade ago, the sovereign debt crisis shook the eurozone to its foundations, so when we see these kinds of spread increases, folks, it's a big sign of looming trouble, not just for France but for Europe altogether. Let's be blunt, France is in serious trouble. From a political system that can't pass sensible reforms to an economic system that's leaking money with no fix in sight, the credit downgrade is just the beginning. What happens when you combine a bloated deficit, stagnant growth, and disillusioned political leadership? You get economic disaster followed by moral hazard, with major impacts not just locally but across the eurozone. France's chickens, as the saying goes, are coming home to roost, and the credit rating agencies see it coming loud and clear. Whether the French government does remains to be seen. For Prime Minister Bayrou to succeed, or survive, he needs to embrace reform like never before. Without serious fiscal discipline, addressing overspending, boosting revenues, and restoring confidence, France's AA3 credit rating might only be the beginning of the ongoing French financial crisis. But hey, at least the croissants are still good, right? Stay tuned, folks. We've got even more juicy geopolitical and economic disasters on the horizon. Will Bayrou survive? How long before Le Pen makes economist hearts race again with more populist economic wisdom? Stick around to find out.